Hey y'all, it's Jon Ray again, and today I'm doing a mystical interpretation of Genesis 1, 9 through 13, where dry land appears and the first forms of life begin to emerge. And this is the third day of creation. And if we're reading this through the mystical lens, the lens of Neville Goddard and the deep wisdom of consciousness itself, then this story is about something very personal. The moment when the work you've done in imagination, that living from the end, living from the wish fulfilled, it's the moment that starts to show up in your reality, in the world around you. But here's the deal. You don't get this without passing through the first 2 days. So remember, first, you spoke light into the darkness. You chose a new identity. And then you created the inner space that was needed. You separated your reactive nature from your intuitive nature. And now, having done those two things, something solid can begin to emerge. Frederico Fagan says that consciousness creates form through meaning and intention. And Neville Goddard says that feeling is the secret. And this is the moment where those invisible seeds that you've planted start to crack open. But just because something starts to form doesn't mean it's finished. You don't want to pull the seeds out of the ground before they've fully sprouted, because that stunts their growth. And this is the moment when you start to see that sprout, but you still need to cultivate it. So let's break it down. In Genesis 1:9, it says, God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together to one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. So waters under the sky equals your emotion, energy, unconscious movement, where gathered together is when that starts to get organized. You're not suppressing your emotions. You're noticing them. You're feeling through them. You're transmuting them into creative potential. This isn't about ignoring what's in your space. It's not about, just constantly going to a mental place. It's about integration. It's about feeling your big feelings and getting to the place where you actually believe what you're saying. You're not ignoring what you're feeling, you're finding actual alignment. And once that happens, dry land appears. And this is the moment where your efforts stop feeling like chaos and start to feel like momentum. You've probably had a moment, like this in your business or creative work, where for weeks you've been ideating, meditating, vision boarding, and really nothing solid or tangible as an outcome has happened. And then one day, some opportunity lands, someone replies to your email, you get clarity on a brand name or a direction, and a real offer comes in. And that moment feels like magic, but it's not really magic. It's the natural result of what happens when you find internal alignment. And if we're real, sometimes we give up right before that alignment happens. We get impatient in the waters. And remember, the waters are just this emotional turmoil that happens when we get silent with ourselves. And so we have to learn how to sit in silence, notice what's happening in our emotional body, but recognize that we are more than that we are in concert with God, awareness itself. And so we don't make our emotions mean something. We don't make the waters mean something. We instead recognize that this is a transmutational process where we are sorting night from day, and we are allowing our emotional constitution to reorganize itself in the order and language of our wish fulfilled. So we know that this is intellectually how it works, but this is where we start to really seed the subconscious. And if we can stay in the state long enough where we're noticing our big feelings, but we're not making them mean something about us, because we know at the spiritual level, our identity is bigger. our territory has already been given. And so when we stay in that higher consciousness state of awareness long enough, land must appear. And that brings us into Genesis 1:10. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. God saw that it was good. So throughout the Bible, naming is ownership. You're now owning the fact that your inner world has begun to take form. And the earth in this verse equals structure, systems, tangible results, where the seas equal emotion, inspiration, movement. And both are good. These serve different functions now. This verse is about integration, and you're no longer all chaos or all control. You're both feeling and foundation. But this happens by becoming the observer of your emotions rather than living in your emotions, allowing your emotions the space to transmute themselves. And that's what reduces the chaos and brings about order and control. And, this is something to think about when you finally launch that project. You may have had this moment where the landing page is up, the offer's out. You're not in your head anymore. You're not feeling underwater. You're in motion, and something real is beginning to take place. And just like this verse says, God saw that it was good. In those moments where you see momentum starting to pick up, you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to notice it. You've got to feel how good that is. You've got to stop and say, yes, this is it. More of this. Ask for more of this. Because one of the biggest blocks to manifestation is skipping the part where you acknowledge how far you've come. Because one of the things that happens is the second that we get our desire, we want more. That's the natural state of evolution. And we really have to learn to have gratitude and be present with what is here with us right now, have appreciation for that. And that takes us into Genesis 1:11. God said, "Let the earth yield grass, herbs yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit after their kind, with the seeds in it on the earth," and it was so. So now the land you formed in your imagination, that wish that you've been living from, starts to grow. You start to see evidence of it. But what is it that's growing? Fruit after their kind. This is the law of assumption in motion. What you've been consistently feeling and thinking is now starting to reproduce itself. And if you've been assuming things like, I'm supported, I'm guided, I'm becoming the version of me who handles things with ease, then the fruits that grow in your life reflect that kind of seed. But if you've unconsciously been planting seeds of anxiety, lack, or fear, well, those are going to grow too. Because remember, the I am, God, reality is a mirror to who you are being. And this verse is a wake-up call to check what you've actually been cultivating. Have you been watering the new identity, or are you circling back to the old one every time things get hard or don't immediately manifest? Manifestation requires emotional discipline. This is why having a sitting practice where you learn to be the observer of your emotions so that you can respond rather than react is so powerful. And this is where you see the patterns that you've rehearsed starting to bloom because you move into that higher state of awareness. And in Genesis 1:12-13, it says, "The earth produced grass, herbs yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with their seeds in it after their kind." Remember, and trees bearing fruit with seeds in it after their kind. And God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, and that was the third day. So this is confirmation. Your world is now reproducing your inner assumptions. Your business, your relationships, your money, they're all yielding after their kind. This is you living in imagination long enough where your subconscious starts to be that thing. And if you want new results, you need new emotional seeds, new assumptions, new identities. And that might be difficult at first because you might not be able to believe that something is possible for you. In those moments, you have to hover over the deep waters within you. You do the somatic healing work where you set a timer for 15 minutes and you just notice the sensations that are happening in your body. You're not judging them. You're not making them mean anything. You're noticing them. And as you put the light of your awareness on those sensations, they will transmute themselves into creative potential. And this is the Holy Spirit confirming for you a new identity, giving you confidence about who you actually are. And remember, evening came first. You don't hustle your way here. You align with it. You imagine. And this happens by sitting in the dark with a vision until something new takes root. You hold the vision and you feel your big feelings about it. Whatever your desire is, you put it in the forefront of your mind, and then your subconscious is going to immediately serve up all the places that you don't feel worthy of that, all of the unknowns and fears that show up. Have awareness of those. Don't react to those. Don't make those wrong. Don't try to ignore those. Sit in the sensation of that, not dwelling in it being a truth, but rather recognizing from this higher state of consciousness that is catalytic information, that is encrypted information that if you sit and feel it long enough will transmute itself back into creative potential. And this is the third day, the day something real starts to grow. But we're not all the way there yet. And yet we recognize that there's motion here. So let's do a prayer practice where we can anchor this in a little bit. We'll call this honoring what has appeared. So this is a practice to help you notice what's forming in your life instead of constantly chasing the things that aren't there yet. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit still, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about an area in your life where you've been applying the law, assuming a new identity. What is the thing that you want? How are you living from that place? And then as you assume that identity, ask what signs of growth have already appeared. What small pieces of evidence, whether it was somebody smiling at you at a store, a book flying off of a shelf, you getting confirmative information somewhere, someone mirroring back to you that you're on the right track. Don't force it, but just allow yourself to daydream a little bit about what is the evidence that's beginning to show up? What land am I starting to see? And then say to yourself, I see the land appearing. This is good. What I've planted is beginning to grow. And feel the gratitude, not just for what's here, but for the consistency that you've shown to get to this place. And this is how you stay in the creative cycle long enough to be able to have that harvest. In our next video, we're going to explore the creation of lights in the sky, the sun, moon, and stars, and what that means for your ability to track time, cycles, and progress as you build something meaningful. Time can be such a tripping point when we're thinking about manifestation. So this is going to be a great way to unpack that further. So to get an email when the next video is released or to request a Bible verse interpretation, go to BibleMystic.com. And if you've ever felt like your vision was just out of reach, like, comment, and subscribe. Share down in the comments what's starting to grow in your life right now and what kind of seed did it come from. We'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.